All right, I am coming to you here with a table talk discussion of Dungeons of Doria. And for those geek gamers, trivia folk, this will be the first video I've done not using my crochet hook because I'm not in my usual filming spot and I don't have it with me. But I do have Dungeons of Doria, and this was a game that was requested by quite a few viewers. I was not aware of it until it was requested, and I reached out to the designer who was kind enough to send me a copy of it. It is a massive dungeon crawl with over 500 loot cards. This is an example of a loot card, and the loot cards in certain cases are things like this armor. Well, this is actually not a loot card. This is a starting piece of armor, but this, for example, is a loot card. It is a healing spell, and you could see just from this one example, this one card example, kind of a preview of what is going to be a theme of this video, which is that this is a game of excess in a lot of ways. There are excessive stats, there are excessive basic mathematical tabulations to do to calculate whether or not you have made a successful hit, whether you have made a critical hit to do extra damage, whether you have defended appropriately. There are cards with quite a lot of teeny tiny print writing on them, such as this card here, this spell guard here, which in addition to the information it offers, and in this case it's telling you you cannot equip it unless you have a basic wisdom of 7 and a psionic value of 7. It also tells you something about the card itself. And then there are cards like this. This is a door card that you open or you pull when you're opening a door. This is, I believe, an optional rule, but it's a standard deck of cards in the box. And it explains to you how you calculate this door event. Now, in this particular case, I left this card out because I was stymied by actually the example here. So it says you will mark this door with a closed door marker. To open it, you have to put your hand into the hole. This character rolls a half a dice rounded up. So the dice in this game are d10s rounded up. This is the amount of both hit points and action points the character has to pay. But then the example, for example, if a 5 was rolled, the character loses 6 HP and 3 HP. By my understanding of this, if you rolled a 5 and divided by half and you rounded up, you would be losing 3 HP and 3 AP. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know. And you think perhaps to yourself, why is she starting this game or this video about this game with such a detailed example? Well, the reason I'm doing that is because this is, I think, on some level emblematic of a pretty big aspect of this gameplay, which may or may not appeal to you as a player. It is, in a lot of ways, a standard dungeon crawl. You play standard characters like a fighter or a sort of a ranger type. And you have initiative points that are measured on this track that you gather up at the beginning of a turn by rolling and adding a certain value, and those become your action points for the round. The monsters themselves also have action points that are standard or set and given on their cards, and then those tokens for them are placed on here. And you play through the round by just doing the action of whoever has the highest number of initiative or action points left. I absolutely love this, especially playing solo, because it gives you an opportunity to sort of look at the situation, know which character you're going to be activating, and think about the options of what to do. And there are a number of different options for each character in a turn. Before I go on, I want to say this game comes with beautiful standees. I'm not using them for this video because it's hard to film standees, I think, for me in a video and have it make sense. So I'm just using these little tokens that do not come with the game that to indicate what my characters are. And then these tokens, which do come with the game, I am using for the monsters. Now, there are monster standees as well, but they also have these tokens because you place them on the initiative board, and I think actually in a lot of ways it makes things easier to key them to. These are monster cards that you get. When you to pull the monsters in, you pull a card, and then you have a level card that is going to adjust the monsters actions and response and health, etc., depending on the level of the monster it is. So, for example, a first level a monster such as that ogre is going to be dictated by what is on this level 1 card. You can see the 1 in the upper right hand corner here, and this is what initiative he starts out with, and you have some description about him, what type of attack he does, what dice he's rolling for it, how many wounds he does, how he can defend, etc. So again, you can see lots of information on everything. And when you look at a character sheet, which are these cards here with the equipment and all of the cards, there's a lot to continually tally up in terms of what you're going to be actually doing when you roll 2 or 3 d10s. So it boils down to rolling 2 or 3 d10s, adding some modifiers against 2 plus d10s on the monster side and whatever modifiers they have to determine whether or not you hit. And then you have a damage based on what is on your item card, which can be enhanced if you are rolling excessive successes. So if for every 10 points above the enemy that you roll, you can add in an additional wound. So in this particular case, this hunting bow could potentially do 2 or even more if a lot of successes were rolled. There are exploding dice as well. So when you roll a 10, you can re-roll it. So in theory, if you're rolling well, you can do more than, say, for example, 1 point of damage with this hunting bow. This concept, the theory of the fact that you could do a lot of damage really comes into play early on in the game, because you will be facing monsters that you cannot, on the face of it, actually defeat, because they will have an armor value. So they will take a minimum of 2 points of damage in any one attack to even lay a wound. The starting values for all the characters on their weapons is just 1 point of damage, unless you happen to do these exploding die rolls and therefore end up with a massive success. So that is one thing about the game that I found a little frustrating. I've seen other people commenting about this. I think it needs a house rule to get through the lower level characters without feeling too frustrated. I've been toying with what type of rule makes sense, whether it is just to say the first level monsters have no armor value, and therefore if you successfully hit them, you will lay a wound, or to assign 2 points of damage minimum to an attack that is done by first level characters. I mean, either one of those things would accomplish the issue of, on the face of it, not really being able to deal with monsters until you are higher level. In the games that I've played, I've kind of tried to just like run past them, but then they end up chasing me in the end, and in a number of cases, just sort of overwhelming the party, and we really couldn't do anything. It wasn't a matter of our decisions. It was just a matter of the way the early items function and the way the monsters function, those at least that have a defense value. So that is one point of bother to me in terms of the way the game works. As mentioned, the initiative track here, the concept that you are using your action. So if at the outset you say end up with 39 IP initiative points, and the rest of your party is in the 20s and the monsters are way low down, you can really plot out and plan what you want to do by spending some time figuring out, do you want to walk somewhere and get some treasure? Each square that you pass through, you can only move orthogonally, is 1 action point. So you can sort of assess, well, maybe I can go pick this up. Maybe I can pick it up and then continue on because I'll still have action points left to get to another tile. Maybe there's a monster I can deal with more. Maybe I'll take a shot at that monster to clear the way for my party. And you have potentially the opportunity to do that a bunch of times in a row with a character if they roll high for that. And if the monsters come in with low initiative, even though you may not be able to defeat them in combat, you may have the opportunity to explore past them, basically, and get somewhere else, and then they will need to come and get you, in essence. And if you're far enough away, they could perhaps run out of distance in one turn to follow you. So there's that kind of puzzle aspect of things that I think as a soloist works well. And it's one of these games that it would be hard for me to imagine, honestly, how much it would flow played in a group, because there is a lot of calculation involved in certain things. And you could see here an example of what I mean from a game that I played where I pulled in this card that needed to, in order for it to be evaluated and completed, this this blinding flash at the door, you could see all the calculations that needed to happen in order to get through the door, and who was wounded and what they lost. And doing that on my own, it didn't really bother me that much, although it is an aspect of the game that might bother some people. I don't mind, but I think as a group that could be potentially a bit of an issue. It comes with it comes with the book of rules, which is pretty thick. It comes with a kind of quick start guide, which has in it some very basic rules that I think should have been in the main book of rules, such as like the explanation of what a monster card actually is. And it's called a level card, not a monster card. But as far as I could tell, in all of the 47 pages of this rule book, there's no card anatomy. There's nothing explaining to you what these values all are. You need to look to the quick start guide for that. And when I play a game, I don't turn to the quick start guide right away, especially when I'm playing a game for a video, because I really want to understand how the rules themselves walk you through. So that was a puzzle for me for a while until I found this card outlined in the quick start guide, not seeing it here. So that was kind of a bummer. There are lots of, and so there is, for example, the card anatomy of equipment, which is great. This is what you need for the monsters, and it needs to be in the main rulebook, not just in something that somebody may not actually even read. The rest of the rules were okay, I guess, is my best answer for that. I like the fact that there were some good examples. I think what makes things a little bit unclear isn't so much the rules as this. For example, this initiative track that is just, it winds around. There's two sides to it. I chose the side that I felt was the less kind of cluttered and busy, but even so, it's just, when you're relying so much on it, I think that having it wind around in that manner is not perhaps the best choice. This is the other side, which is kind of like a spiral. I also just, when it gets cluttered with monsters and things, it's not as intuitive, or at a glance to see sort of who's next is not particularly clear when it's not linear like this. So this is something that I feel was already mentioned it was different in a prototype that I saw, but it was changed to this, and I don't actually think this solves the particular issue. So again, that was like another gripe I had with it. And I realized, like, I'm sounding somewhat negative about the game. I actually enjoy a lot of aspects of it. And here's an example of the rule book that does a very nice job of giving you very clear examples of various things you can do, exploration, and how you place monster icons and what the monster icons mean, what the additional things that you're going to see things on tiles that don't necessarily refer to the scenario that you're playing. It comes with, you can play short scenarios, or there's a whole bunch of different campaigns. All that is really clearly laid out. And again, the play examples are really welcome here. And I think that that is extremely well done by the rules. Ditto for the combat examples and things of that nature. There is a booklet here that are optional room events. I won't show this to you, but I appreciated this as well. So each of the tiles has a code on it, and for different scenarios in a campaign, you will be instructed as to, you're going to be pulling certain tiles with certain numbers and then a certain number of random tiles. There's quite a thick stack of tiles for the game. And then this has room events that are keyed to the specific tile. So it's going to make sense based on the visual of the tile. You don't have to use this, but you can. And I thought this was great. It made it feel like a role-playing game, or like there was a GM sort of putting in a little twist into the dungeon. And I think this is a natural lead into why I actually, in the end, despite some of the challenges that I've had with the physical aspect of the game, I guess you could call it, a lot of the cards like move around, and the font is super small, and there is that kind of math aspect. It's not hard math, but it is like a constant sort of double digit, like addition and subtraction kind of math. The reason that I really do like this game, and where I think it succeeds in its goal as a dungeon crawler, is you do feel, or I did feel, like I was kind of creeping around a dungeon. The fact that the game plays slowly, at least for me, with the calculation of how much, points do I have to do this. And actually, I don't think I showed you the example of what all the actions are and what the AP cost is, but I will. So here are the standard actions, and they're delineated nicely in the rule book, but this is the reference card. You can walk around, jump, you can swap places with somebody, you can reveal a room tile, search for treasures in a couple different ways. And again, a nice choice there, because the treasure deck is going to have not only treasures, but it's also going to have traps and things. So it kind of represents like the detritus of what's in the dungeon, and that might be a trap. So you can, if you spend more action points, pull 2 cards and choose one, as opposed to just spending 1 action point and getting what you get, which could be a trap that you would have to deal with. You can also attack or use a regular item. You can repair your armor. So in this game, you can use your armor to defend yourself, which is another really cool concept in the game. So for example, if you are wielding this, or carrying this massive axe, which is going to do 2d plus 3 damage, so 2d10s plus 3 damage, and you're being attacked, you can use it to defend yourself. And to do that, representing how big it is, you get to roll 2d plus 1 as a defense. However, there's a penalty to pay if you do that, and that penalty is that it becomes damaged, and you need to there's a special damage token that you put onto the item, and you cannot then reuse the item that has this until you pay the action point cost to repair it. So that's a super cool, very thematic kind of mechanism, and it's like the best kind of little rule, because thematically it makes so much sense. If you're standing there and you've got an axe in your hand, you're probably gonna throw it up in defense if you're not attacking. So that makes a lot of sense, and it's a great little rule in there. So there is you can use your actions, as mentioned, to repair armor. You can carry characters if they've become unconscious. You can move them, and you could also basically like take or repair items by helping others. So the things that you can do make a lot of sense, and do give you this real feeling of it's not just like you're rolling dice despite all the numbers. It's not just like you're rolling dice and like moving around and counting the squares. At least for my play, it was very immersive despite all of the basic math. It was very immersive in that I was thinking like, okay, I can't deal with this gargoyle. There isn't a sneak test, at least as I saw it. And I think that would have been a good thing to add in, but I could sneak by, basically walk by the inert gargoyle, and then I'm going to be able to pick up this treasure. I'm going to be able to get to another room tile to give some distance between me and the gargoyle, etc. So that type of planning is encouraged by the game mechanics and the initiative track, especially if you have like an outlier where somebody rolls up a lot of initiative to start. And because the characters do have these stats here, so your strength and your constitution, your agility, your perception, your wisdom, and your sort of psionic aspect, these are numbers that are just baked into the character, and then they can change during the course of the game depending on items and things that you get and leveling up. You have options to level up and change the value, which then will change an associated value with it, which will then give you, for example, what you add on to the die roll you do for initiative, or how many points you have to spend on spells. So you're changing these values and you're leveling up your character and tailoring your character based on the choices that you make. Everybody could use any equipment. Everybody could pick up a spell. Everybody could pick up a massive warhammer, but whether or not you can use it successfully, whether or not you can actually wield it, has to do with the choices that you make, because there will be those requirements about, for example, this massive warhammer. You could pick it up, but if you don't have strength of 11 and constitution of 9, you can't use it. So you might pick it up. You might pick it up and give it to a character in your party, and there is an action mechanic for that. You may choose to do that. You may choose to buy it. There's a kind of like magical shop that replenishes at the end of every round, which is also great. Like they give you these 510 items. They want you to see a lot of them, and I love that. So there's 3 new things to look at every time. If you pull in something like a trap, until you deal with it, it's going to block the coming in of new items. So there could be only 2 or 1 or none if you've got traps there that you're not dealing with. So it kind of forces you to deal with it in that way. But basically, it's helping you cycle through the cards, and it's not making a restriction on what you get. It's just making a restriction on what you use. So it's adding another level of cooperation and thought. Well, I don't need this thing. I just picked this up because I killed this monster. I don't need this thing, but my party member needs it. Let me carry it, and then let us try to get adjacent to each other so we can, so I can give it to my party member. Those types of things that this game allows for are extremely successful.